right. Yeah, welcome to First Take.
I'd like to welcome everybody. My
Yeah,
name is James,
my name is Justin. What we
and
got?
we
Episode, what is this, 5?
episode
I'm
five,
cutting you off here.
Cinco. No, this is episode 5 on Verse Take, and we are ready to rock and ready to roll.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, and this week we're talking about William Carlos Williams. So it's an exciting one.
Er,
World War I time poetry.
right, early modernist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's like one that kind of got like one of the first, poets for me that I was reading it and I was like, I don't like him and Ezra Pound. I was like, I don't really fully know what's going on here. I don't really
Mm,
fully know what they're talking about. Like some of them, they're a little more straightforward, but some of them, no, I was like, I don't know. Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
And that has been a criticism of some of the early modernists that they were a bit
Hmm.
too erudite, or they were like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's like the poetry of the elite.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Highly educated. Yeah.
Which is why the poet of the hour, William Carlos Williams, he was
Hmm.
trying to bring it back to a more rootsy, like the Americana, the lingo of the average American, so to speak.
Right. That's kind of part that one of the tenets of I don't my French is terrible, but the Imagist
Mm,
movement, one of those I think they had like three tenets early on, one of them being, using, paring everything down to like its basic, not using any words that weren't necessary. And you just like with
right.
Hilda Doolittle going from Hilda Doolittle to HD, for her pseudonym.
Mm. And and I don't really care what the French have to say. I'm gonna just say images. Once it became, because in the American Imagist movement, that's when we
Hmm.
got the more boiling it down to the sort of the bare bones sort of American, like average everyday lingo. William Carlos Williams, I believe, he even said that his poetry was like from the mouths of, like, mothers, like calling after their
Hmm.
children and
Hmm.
stuff
Hmm.
like that.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. He wrote a few letters and about kind of his poetry is like bits and I'm paraphrasing, but like pieces, fragments of conversation that he heard. Obviously, being a physician, he got to deal with the public quite a bit,
Mm.
which is pretty cool. I think he's the first poet that well, maybe Robert Frost falls into this too, but the first poet that we've talked about that wasn't a just like a professional poet. He
Right,
made his
right.
money from being a doctor, um, which I know he thought was to his advantage because he didn't have to write
Uh,
anything in order to make money. It wasn't tied to his sort of financial well-being.
right, right, right. And and he was also known for you know um writing, like, for the long haul, like spending his time writing, like really grinding away at the his poetry.
Mm-mm. Yeah, yeah. It is interesting. Well, and with many of his poems being, we were kind of talking about this, off air, but many of his poems kind of being a little bit shorter, just like
Mm,
little, uh, I almost imagine him maybe, yeah, maybe, he's, grinding away, but also like, in between office visits, like scribbling little things down
mm.
and, um, sticking them in his pocket or something like that, and maybe taking them home for later.
And it's very interesting that you said that, because he is a he was influenced by a photographer. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was a photographer that sort
Mm-hmm.
of influenced him early on, and
Mm-hmm.
sort of he wanted to capture these little, I almost said vignettes, but these little
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
snapshots,
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
like
yeah.
Sort of like when it comes to William Carlos Williams, a picture is definitely worth 1,000 words.
Right, right. Kind of goes back to his something he's kind of famous for is that phrase no ideas button things.
Mm.
And also I had mentioned the sort of the French pronunciation of the images previously. But something I learned I didn't know previously was that Ezra Pound kind of putting together that sort of imagist movement, kind of laying down the rules for it, wanted to kind of appeal to modern sensibilities and give it sort of a sort of allude to the famous at the time French painters. And
Mm.
you have like Cézanne and Rousseau and famous French painters at the time. Everything that was kind of coming out of Paris was like that was modernity. So trying to make poetry also give it that same sort of kind of almost like marketing appeal, by kind of making you think of sort of like this French movement, um, which is kind of an I don't know, just an interesting thing. Also that William Carlos Williams was like really into like John Keats and some other poets that are a little bit more strict and formal until he met Ezra Pound, who had
Mm.
kind of a large influence on him.
Kind of I get him more into like sort of the free verse sort of side of things.
Yeah, kind of like more of free verse and just parent and using instead of something that Pound had said about not poetry, sort of conforming to sort of like a musical phrase rather than a metronome.
Mm.
And so kind of like going to like the language of everyday people, and paring it down to its sort of base elements, not being kind of confined to the basically like to the metronome of meter.
Right, right, right. And this is where we get into the whole American variable foot.
Hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
believe that's what it was called, like because the way like he sort of will break up a line into threes. Like a lot of his poetry has
Mm-hmm.
lines broken up into sort of three parts, and
Yeah.
that three-part divide is sort of known as the American variable foot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was actually kind of thinking about that, something along those lines myself the other day. I was like, what if maybe I should just write in like odd numbered like syllables or like odd, sort of odd, you know, like that might almost be more close to English if it was like, 7 and 5 rather than, you know,
American English.
yeah, right.
And there's something here because this Imagist poetry came from an appreciation for like the Japanese haiku and some like
Mm,
Eastern forms of poetry, how
mm,
they would
mm,
use like these few syllables to illustrate this concise image, like of a
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
cherry blossom or a wave or just whatever. Like
right.
the idea of using these few syllables to illustrate a concise image, that idea. They got a lot of these early imagistes because they were in
Mm-hmm,
France. These
mm-hmm,
imagistes got these ideas from the Eastern world. The
mm.
Japanese haiku in particular.
That's true. Yeah, I kind of forgot Ezra Pound's like affinity for the haiku.
Yeah.
Um, Not that this is about Ezra Pound, but he's
This
just
is not.
yeah, he was an influential figure on William Carlos Williams.
He was. He
Um,
definitely was.
so that yeah, so kind of plays a part in that this sort of broader kind of school or that William Carlos Williams was a part of. Um,
And we
yeah.
want you guys to kind of have an appreciation for this because the poems are sort of short and sort of concise,
Mm,
and
mm,
we
mm-hmm,
and and also I kind of want you guys to understand that this was seen as avant-garde for the time.
Mm-hmm.
These
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Mm-hmm.
like, this sort of like short, like image oriented poetry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's definitely one you kind of have to have a bit of an understanding of kind of, sort of the broader context to kind of appreciate exactly what he's kind of doing or going for. Otherwise you'd be like, okay,
Okay.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
So
But
that's
this
yeah.
this is like setting up the whole beat
Mm-hmm.
poetry,
Right, right.
of
Yeah.
seeing America
Mm-hmm.
as this like this almost this fantastical place, like America's almost like turn of the millennia Ireland or
Mm,
something,
mm,
like
mm, mm.
this place has a certain magic to it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's something I found interesting too. I watched a little documentary on William Carlos Williams, in preparation for this, and learning like he kind of believed it was interviewing his son, and his son was, talking about his dad, because his son took over his dad's, private, medical practice after his dad had passed. And he was talking about his dad, feeling like, a man or, a person should be, uh, involved in his community, should be like a part of his community. And kind of going to your point about, kind of seeing America as, something. There were many poets, a few poets, Ezra Pound, like we talked about before, T.S. Eliot, that had had gone to Europe, and kind of left America behind more or less at the time.
Mm.
But he stayed in Paterson, New Jersey. Or no, sorry, Rutherford, New Jersey.
Oh, yeah,
Patterson's
yeah, yeah.
book, yeah. But stayed in Rutherford, and was a member of like the Unitarian Church his entire life. He was I think his brother designed the church too, or designed the library too, or something like. They're just a family, in the town,
Mm.
in the town. He wasn't just kind of a different, sort of view sometimes, I think, than we think of poets. Maybe Ezra Pound might be more of like what you consider a poet. He's a little insane. But
Mm.
William Carlos Williams was much more of like kind of like Wallace Stevens was actually. It's, kind of just like a businessman. He was a doctor. He was a, kind of a, just
Even
a
T.S.
public figure.
Eliot,
Hmm. Hmm.
who was somewhat of an antagonist,
Mm,
to William Carlos Williams. It may have been a bit one sided, but
mm,
you know because T.S. Eliot may have been seen as a bit more highbrow in the
mm-hmm,
vein of the Ezra Pound sort of
mm,
erudite literary modernists,
mm-hmm,
as
mm-hmm,
opposed to some everyday grab America by the horns modernist of
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
William Carlos Williams.
Yeah. Well, I think that, that's kind of one thing too, with the movement is, seeing the mundane kind of in a new light. Um, f finding poetry, finding, maybe beauty or, um, artistic value, merit in just, your everyday, um, sort of images, occurrences, the things you see around you. Um,
Mm.
which, I kind of, I'm a little, sympathetic to that feeling, personally.
Mm. Yeah. Hey.
Mm,
Hey. Very well said, sir. Very well said indeed.
yeah,
So,
yeah. But hey, you want to get into it? Are you ready? You want to keep
yeah,
on? Yeah.
I'm ready to get into it, and of course, like more will come up over the course of the poetry analysis. But I chose a poem, and it's his most anthologized poem. It's called "The Red Wheelbarrow."
Hmm. Hmm.
And which one? Tell them which one you got, Justin.
To a Poor Old Woman, which is a popular one too by him, but it's always been, my favorite. I've thought about it for I don't almost, I don't know, the last 8 years or something. It's been, I think I probably read it like right out of college. I think I was like
Mm,
22 or 23. And I've probably 8, 9 years, like this poem's just like stuck in my head. Um,
mm.
so yeah, that's the one I went with.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. Do you want to go,
uh,
or did you go first last time, or did I go first?
I'm not sure, but I was queuing up ready to go.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'll go. I'll go. Hold on, I press the wrong button. And the red wheelbarrow. All right, here we are. The red wheelbarrow. If everyone can sort of see that. All right. The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. All right, that's it. That is the poem. And we were talking about earlier, it's a very short, concise, punchy
Mhm.
poem. We sort of have the sort of working class vibes of a wheelbarrow, or and even chickens, and sort of allusions to maybe like a bit of a sort of working class, blue collar, even Americana life. And with the way we have the line structured, we have sort of these three words, and then these stanzas these two line stanzas that consist of three words followed by one word with two syllables. So it almost feels like a bit of a dumping, like a person might even do with the wheelbarrow. The stanzas almost look like little wheelbarrows. But
Mhm.
so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So almost like we're sort of dumping little lines out, like one would use a wheelbarrow to dump things out. And yeah, so what do anything
Yeah.
anything about the structure of it, Justin? Got anything to
Yeah, I
say about the
mean,
structure of the
one
poem?
thing, one thing that kind of, jumps out, uh, there's no capitalization, there's no punctuation, um,
Right.
and it's, you're given sort of, you know, uh, the first, I guess stanza or couplet, however, the first two lines, so much depends upon, and then, you're kind of given image, 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 a red
Mm,
wheelbarrow glazed with rain water, beside the white chickens. And,
mm,
um, yeah, this is one of those poems. This is actually, I remember an English teacher showing, going, doing this with like the class, like in eighth grade, Mr. Ford.
mm.
And at that time I was unimpressed, I was just like,
Yeah.
I didn't know a lot of poetry at the time,
Right.
I knew very little. I think, other than, Shel Silverstein and, Dr. Seuss. And I was just kind of like, oh, like, okay, yeah, red, I get it. He's trying to impress upon us, that, hey, this image, this red wheelbarrow, do you see it? Do you see it? But I mean, this is almost like, I think the reason why this is the most anthologized is because like this is like an images poem. It's short, it's to the point. There's no wasted words,
Right.
and it's just he's not. Other than him saying so much depends upon, he's really not. That's his only comment.
Mm,
That's the only commentary. Everything else we kind of have to glean from ourselves.
Right.
So I guess you're kind of imagining, I don't know, I'm kind of imagining, we're out in the yard after a rain, there's work to be done. Um, maybe we're in a rural place, maybe not, but I can kind of imagine the scene. There might even be a fence. There might be a lot of, I don't know, patchy grass,
Right.
chickens, kind of, walking around. We're fresh, fresh after a rain. You gotta, get right back to it. That's kind of what this kind of drums up for, sort of for me. And just looking at this red wheelbarrow, this is the thing that is going to get the this is what's going to get the job done. My
Right.
whole this thing here is like almost my saving grace. This red wheelbarrow, because
Right.
it's cutting my job in half. Essentially. Um,
Mm. And yeah,
so that was more than just structure. I know that you asked me about, but
right, right. But are
yeah.
just the structured sort of the enjambment, so and the
Mm-hmm.
just the way the stanzas are set up, sort of the poem as a phenomenon, the actual lines on the page. What they're trying to get us almost to go beyond words. They want us to sort of go beyond like just reading a poem to the point where
Mm-hmm.
we're
Mm-hmm.
almost even seeing an image, yes, but almost like experiencing an image,
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
almost like when the soap, because it's brilliant because the first line is the poet actually, what the actual, as the poet poeticizes, so to speak, so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow. Who knows what the farmer or the worker or the tender of the chickens, who knows what they almost carry their livelihood in that wheelbarrow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's that wheelbarrow is almost a wheelbarrow of, it's a wheelbarrow of the potential for the rest of their lives, almost, as they feed these chickens, and they need the rain almost to water the crops or the animals or whatever they tend to. The rain is almost, the fact that it has rain carries with it symbolism of that now the wheelbarrow has something to do. And the chickens, the fact that there's chickens, multiple chickens, and they're alive shows this thing has been going for a while. This so that's so We may just see an image of a wheelbarrow and chickens, but we're seeing a person's life. And this is how the poem sort of gives us more than what even a picture could give, because
Mm-hmm.
it allows the artist to sort of poeticize. So much depends upon, and these three images are like three sort of gut punches to your
Mm-hmm.
ethos, to our sense of
Mm-hmm.
ethos. Like so much depends upon this. And a wheelbarrow is something, and it's a tool used to carry a burden.
Yeah.
These tools of the farmer, and I'm extrapolating a bit here, but the farmer or the person working on the railroad or the person working on a boat, these sort of down, kind of close to the earth jobs and professions, they it's really a lot riding on them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
even to the point of
Yeah. Yeah.
who knows how many people this guy's feeding with these chickens. Could be, he
Yeah.
could be
Right.
funding, or sourcing the butcher in town.
Mm.
So it's not even just him. It's the town and their source of protein.
Mm. Mm.
So even so, while we do get these snapshots, and while we do get these clear, concise sort of images, the words and the fact that it is a poem, the phenomenon of the poem allows the artist to poeticize and sort of take us beyond the poem. It sort of shatters the poem and allows us to experience a snapshot of space and time almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 That's interesting. Something too. With with those two, red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater. There is a little. nothing's rhyming, but there's still like sounds, like and sort of unlike sounds that kind of carry through there, a red wheelbarrow glazed with rain water, it's kind of it, it's not there's kind of something there where so much depends upon beside the white chickens, you kind of have like these endings, these yeah, I don't know what you'd call that. I'm blanking on a term for it, but that, upon chickens, it's a little bit of a sort of a kind of off rhyme, but it gives you that, that upon chickens, you know, barrow, water, you know, red wheelbarrow,
It's something
rain,
there. The
water,
fact that it's like two syllables,
hmm
like
hmm
upon a
Yeah,
red wheelbarrow. I almost imagine it almost seems like it's sort of like dumping to me, like I'm sort of dumping off the line.
right, right. And there is, there is artistic, kind of merit to, the way that this is kind of laid out for us, right? I mean, this is, it's essentially a single sentence,
Right. That is
but
interesting.
even breaking it up, it's almost like several trips in the wheelbarrow, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's a good one. It's a power. It gives you kind of like a powerful image. It's something that kind of it sticks in the mind, you know.
And we could almost say so much depends upon the enjoyment of the poet itself, of the poem
Mm,
itself.
mm,
You know,
hmm hmm
just that
Yeah,
open
for sure,
that
absolutely.
opening the opening line is the master stroke, and a lot of the and it's
Mm,
interesting because a lot of the master strokes of poetry usually come at the end. But this poem, the sort of masterful piece of it, and don't get me wrong, there's mastery throughout it, but that a lot that so much depends is almost the hinge of the wheels of the wheelbarrow in a way.
mm,
Like
mm.
the poem almost hinges on that so much depends upon.
Yeah, it's a little different if you didn't read those first two lines and you just go, a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens,
Right. And to be honest, there actually was a bit of controversy around even calling it the red wheelbarrow because
Mm,
when the poem first appeared, I believe it was just titled like with Roman numerals in the order of the book.
mm.
I
Okay, I
think,
didn't know that.
yeah, it actually through being anthologized so much
Mm,
became known as the red wheelbarrow.
interesting. That's
And I
interesting.
and I'm
Yeah.
not sure if William Carlos Williams himself ever commented on it, but I know
Mm,
that you know many poets, like people that knew him and things, they thought that to name the poem cheapened it a bit, cheap, in a way.
hmm.
But
Yeah,
so
yeah, that's interesting. I can kind of see that. I didn't know that.
mm, so
No, I
yeah,
mean the poem the poem does depend upon that so much depends upon.
right, right.
You're kind of right. Like that is what, everything kind of rests on that almost. Not everything, but it.
Sort of almost hinges. It's like a
Mhm,
hinge or
mhm,
something.
mhm. Yeah,
it
yeah.
op- it al- it almost opens a door because that is like you pointed out, that is his commentary. That
Mhm,
is the only
mhm.
commentary. That is
Yeah.
what is sort of being that is how he is poeticizing, so to speak.
It's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, you otherwise you have these three images or kind of two images sort of the red wheelbarrow also glazed with rainwater beside the white
Mm,
chickens but you kind of sort of innocuous kind of just images um, without that sort of comment there we kind of have it gives us it gives us context.
Mm.
Otherwise, we, like, okay, red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Okay, I see it. I get it.
Right. But
And it so much depends upon, gives us like almost like makes it, makes it gives us the necessity of it.
right, gives us almost a sense of direction. It
Yeah,
orients the poem.
and weight. Yeah,
Right.
and weight. All of a sudden, like, oh, this isn't just a red wheelbarrow.
Right. Who knows actually what this is?
Right. Yeah. This could be this could be food for a week.
Right.
Or whatever. Yeah. This is someone's livelihood.
Exactly, man. So
Yeah.
that is the Red Wheelbarrow. Great poem by William Carlos Williams.
Classic. Yeah. No, great example. I mean, that's why it's the most anthologized. I mean, it is like the example of what an Images poem
right
should be. I mean, he nails it there.
Right.
He kind of, yeah.
Boom. Exactly. And even though by that time he had been sort of, maybe even renouncing the Images movement a bit, but that was kind of in response to T.S. Eliot's, I think, The Wasteland. It was, such a sort of, so he just viewed it as sort of like highbrow, like sort of, sort of detached from sort of the sort of common everyday, the language, because and I don't necessarily want to say that William Carlos Williams was, this like a sort of a blue collar laborer, but he thought there was great poetry in the language of the American working classes, African American and other immigrant groups, just their use of language. He felt like there was great poetry in their use of language.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Also, talking about him sort of kind of maybe not renouncing, but moving away from the Images movement. Like everyone that's associated with it eventually did that. Ezra Pound turned his back on it. I don't know if HD did, but I know Amy Lowell that kind of took over the Images movement after Ezra Pound also turned her back on it later on as well. So it's kind of funny in that,
And fun fact, the Images movement did have a lot of women a part of it. That was also one thing I noticed, or not only noticed, but also read about. So
yeah.
Fun fact.
Yeah. Fun facts. Yeah. Well, hey, to a poor old woman, I'm ready to. I'm fired up and ready to go. If you want to throw that one on the screen.
Share that screen.
Hey James, go ahead and pull up Can you pull up for me To a Poor Old Woman? I'm trying to be my best Joe Rogan with the. Hey Jamie, pull up.
Coming right up.
Hey Jamie, pull up that video of a bear.
Jamie, pull up that video of a bear ripping a child's throat out.
Right? Yeah. It's just massive, the power. Okay.
Look at the speed.
I know, yeah. I mean, could you imagine? He makes this face too.
Just the claws just ripping you to shreds, and there's nothing you could do. He's like,
it's actually, I'm not a huge Joe Rogan fan. That's actually the one thing, maybe the thing I like about him best. I kind of share that. Also, excitement of like animals and watching animals do great,
And then the guy across from him was like, bro, what if I fought back? And he's like, bro, you stand no chance. Just one swipe of his paw would crush your bones and break your ribs.
An orangutan tearing your face off. Jamie,
his
pull up that video of the orangutan ripping that guy's scalp off.
his you don't understand, man. An orangutan's fingers are designed to enter your skin and rip your
Right,
flesh
yeah.
right off.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Cool. So, To a Poor Old Woman by William Carlos Williams. Munching a plum on the street, a paper bag of them in her hand. They taste good to her. They taste good to her. They taste good to her. You can see it by the way she gives herself to the one half sucked out in her hand. Comforted, a solace of ripe plums seeming to fill the air. They taste good to her. Um, so yeah, I mean that's my reading of it. This is an interesting one because, like I had mentioned before, with the red wheelbarrow, there in that one, no punctuation, no capitalization. I actually listened to him um, read that one, and he just read it straight through like it was a sentence, you know.
Mm.
And this one, there is a little bit of there is a little bit of a little bit of kind of structure, capitalization, yeah. So with that first stanza, I mean, we start off the poem, you know, lowercase munching. We're kind of which is kind of interesting. It's almost like that is a comment on him, sort of viewing the poor old woman. He's right in the middle of it. We kind of start in the middle of it,
Right.
by, munching a plum on the street, a paper bag of them in her hand. And I mean, you could probably, put a period or a comma in between on the street, maybe a comma, a paper bag of them in her hand. But, then to kind of emphasize, um, you know, capital T, they taste good to her. Like this is like a phrase, they taste good to her. We don't have a period, but then on the next line, another capital T, they taste good to her, period. To break that line, they taste good to her. There's, and maybe someone reading this would just say, they taste good to her, they taste good to her, they taste good to her. Maybe that would be a way, but there's something in the enjambment there, that,
Mm-hmm.
and this is, as you well know, the audience doesn't know, but I always go back to those four lines because there's just, and I, when I write myself, I think about this often because, I mean, here is like him, sort of, could anyone could do this after, but it would remind me of him. I don't know if anyone did it before him, but just the way he used the line breaks to emphasize,
Right.
they taste good to her. They taste good, to her. They taste good to her. Like putting that emphasis at different parts of the sentence gives you kind of a different sort of sense of, kind of what that means.
This is
But
when we really
yeah.
this is when we really encounter the poem as art. This is where the art this is where we're really getting into the art of the poem, because a poem is word on a page, could be read out loud, maybe should be read out loud, but not always read out loud. But we're encountering the poem.
Right, yeah.
We're literally encountering this poem right
Mm-hmm.
here with the enjambment and the use of the period. I mean, he's taking advantage. I mean, poetry can even access this is something we learned in school. I mean, the period. Now the period is here in the middle of this line. It's this is phenomenologically present. The poem is present as a thing. It is like
Yes.
we are literally encountering this thing. This is when this is art. This is when you really encounter fine art. You're encountering this is existing on its own right now.
Yeah.
But the use
No,
this is some of the most brilliant use of it. When you sent me that this was the one you're doing, I was like, yeah, because I didn't even think about doing this one, and it didn't even
Mm-hmm,
come
mm-hmm.
across.
Good.
It didn't even come across my mind. I
Yeah.
didn't even read this one. I only remembered this one when you texted me and said you were doing this one. Yeah,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Good, good.
this is brilliant. This is we're literally encountering poetry as art, like right here. Like
Yeah.
this is
Yeah,
what
no,
it is.
absolutely. This is one that, it exists on the page
Right.
as well as, being spoken and everything. But I mean, you know, so much depends upon one reading this on the page, right?
Right.
So, but kind of going along, with, so, that last, they taste good to her. He goes on to the third stanza there, and he doesn't have a period at the end of that one. But it, again, it's kind of almost like a new thought or a new phrase, with that capital. You can see it by the way she gives herself to the one half sucked out in her hand. And I'm gonna continue on. I'm gonna go back to that, but and then again, no period, but capital comforted, a solace of ripe plums, seeming to fill the air. They taste good to her. Another capital. It's almost kind of another capital T there at the end. It's like
Almost like a
that's how he's
refrain.
that's kind of how he's breaking it up. Yeah, it is a refrain, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, I mean this is another one that we're dealing with everyday people. We're seeing an image where we're just as you were saying, we're kind of this is something we're encountering, and I can kind of imagine this one coming across this woman. She's, I don't know, I almost imagine her, maybe she's sitting on a sidewalk on on the street, the world around her moving, and she's deaf to it, blind and deaf to it all, sitting there. He doesn't say she has her eyes closed, but I imagine she has her eyes closed and she's just eating that, like really savoring this, this plum in her hand, and you can see it, you can see it by, her, the way she, in that third one, the way she gives herself, to the one sucked out in her hand, she's just all the juice, just, taking in this plum, she's got a bag of them, like, kind of, maybe she's got like a brown paper bag of them here. I don't know how big the bag is, but sort of comforted, a solace of ripe plums seeming to fill the air. Almost like this, woman almost has like an aura around her, of this plum. You know, you, I've done it myself, maybe with like a, like a glass of wine or a beer or something, where I've, this kind of sensual sort of moment of, sort of relief and kind of release and giving yourself to this, it's like a moment of bliss, and for her, it's these plums. She's, to me, I'm thinking she's on her way from someplace to someplace,
Right.
this poor old woman, who, I'm also gonna, I'm extrapolating, I'm assuming some things is that, maybe this poor old woman hasn't had the easiest life or the best life, and, you know, there's this moment of maybe, transcendence, with this, sort of mundane, everyday, it's just a plum. But
Right.
that's kind of what the image is. That's what the poem is supposed to kind of be. Is this a mundane? How many times you pass someone on the street, they're eating something, or they're enjoying something, or you've done it yourself, and you just think, I mean, that's just life. That
Right.
there's nothing special about this. But these are the moments. These are the moments that we have to capture. This is someone could read this 100 years into the future, and they'll know that it's sort of a quintessential human experience.
It's so interesting that you said that, because when William Carlos Williams was writing a lot of these, like, photography was really just getting going. Like I said, he was kind of he was kind of influenced by a photographer. And the his poems are almost like they're almost getting at the same thing that, like, the Times picture of the year or something like
Hmm.
that, like,
Hmm.
or
Yeah, yeah.
the whenever they do like the greatest pictures of the year. Before that was
Hmm.
really popular, really kind of the culture was able to formulate that idea. These were sort of the ideas of like these sort of culturally relevant, almost a culturally relevant snapshot. There, it's a we're trying to capture something beyond the page. As
Hmm.
as art
Hmm.
always does. Like you mentioned, transcendent, and
Hmm. Hmm.
it's almost like the way we get on in the way we get sort of on the page. And that second stanza, they taste good to her, they taste good to her, they taste good to her. Like, it's almost like these are almost like impulses or notions of when you just look at somebody and you're almost just you're almost like caught up in sort of the pleasantry of people watching. You just like watch
Hmm.
somebody,
Hmm.
you just
Hmm.
get a glimpse of them, and you kind of have a insight to them that's that you may yourself have experienced. And like
Hmm.
biting
Hmm.
into ripe fruit, we all have experienced that. But the another kind of transcendent aspect is the poor old woman. Is she poor because, like you've mentioned, she hasn't had
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
easiest life? Or is
Hmm.
she poor
Hmm.
because she may not have too many of these sort of transcendent experiences left? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
how many more plums does she have to bite? You know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Um, so, like, I mean, the phrase is a picture's worth a thousand words, but with a poet like William Carlos Williams, it's almost like these words are painting thousands of pictures.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's something too. You were mentioning about, like, like the Times picture of the year, and that's what I kind of imagine. Like, I've seen a couple, you know, um, photography books where it's like rural Mississippi, forgotten Mississippi, or it's it's black and white and it's Harlem and it's like kids, you know, playing in the fire hydrant, or something,
Mm,
photos like that,
right, right.
and that's kind of what I think of his kind of poetry too, in that sort of in that regard. Um, so yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that he was influenced by a photographer, but it kind of makes sense. I could see the
Yeah,
the
I
sort of
wish I could.
connection.
I wish I could sort of remember the guy's name, or what sort of the more about it. But I just know it was like there was a photographer that he sort of like that also sort of influenced him. To write certain poems, or his photography sort of influenced him to write a. I can't remember if it was a poem or a certain string of
Hmm.
poems, but he
Hmm.
was sort of moved by some early photography. And I think this was in
Yeah.
like the 30s or 40s, maybe like
Mm,
something like
mm.
that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I know. Yeah, I mean, even for myself, if I go to like an art museum or something like that, and I see the different things that there is something there with like visual artists, and even like poetry, or whatever kind of sort of literary kind of endeavor, like you can take something from um, kind of what visual artists do. Um, that it is always, I don't know, for whatever reason, like kind of inspiring when you go and I, quick stories, like I remember this German painter that painted these little 5 by 9. He painted thousands, like I think literally tens of thousands of them, because for I think it was like 27 years he painted the same glass of water on his kitchen table with his with the window behind it. I think he did it either once or twice a day at the same time, just painted that. And then if as you looked at many of them, you could see just it gave you it, you could it was more than just a glass of water.
Right.
There was it kind of through that repetition, other qualities came out, and so that like kind of inspired me at the time, like, oh, what if I just wrote a stanza, or whatever, twice a day at like this time every day, and then I just see over time what it brings out. So yeah, I think there's always just something there with like visual artists that can kind of spur some kind of creative, spur the creative juices, I guess, more or less.
Hmm. And yeah, I mean, I can definitely see what you mean, and it's just interesting to draw a line from sort of the Eastern Japanese sort of haiku, that ultra concise, even to the point of counting the syllables, which was also like like a lot of imagery based poetry, to sort of the
Hmm.
French imagistes, sort of, even though they were sort of, viewed as highbrow, till, it's up to, then we get the William Carlos Williams to kind of give sort of an American imagist movement, sort of with in his words, the vocabulary of, sort of some of these working class figures. And sort of some of his imagist poetry, it actually, as I was reading it, it was really reminding me of a lot of poetry that we have in like in our modern day, with the sort
Hmm.
of short, like the different, like kind of arbitrary way of dividing up sentences, and sort of short, concise words with that attempt to sort of strike at a give you a strike at a picture. Even some of the some of your more the poetry that you might even find on internet message boards. I think
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't want to call any names, but some of the more modern poets that kind of
Yeah, I kind of
internet,
names.
that kind of
Yeah.
came up on the
Right.
internet. I
Hmm.
think they
Hmm.
might, I
Hmm.
think they should maybe tip their hat to a William Carlos Williams.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something that, kind of William Carlos Williams, I don't know if it's exactly, I don't know if I'm right to credit him, but during that time period, those, kind of modernists kind of gave us, made the line kind of a tool, you know,
Mm.
that one could, sort of vary the line, and, that would sort of inform the poem. Um, rather than, just like iambic pentameter or something like that, where everything was,
Mm.
fairly, you have like blank verse, and that's all, it's all iambic pentameter. Like, it's all pretty much,
Yeah.
it's standardized, where
Right.
that kind of made it into something that could be kind of expressive, and, could, sort of could inform the reader.
Mm. So yeah, I mean, I think that we can that's sort of the idea of, and obviously there's the whole, like, idea, maybe like teenage girl sort of poetry, that has these sort of these like kind of like that could be viewed as like sort of this internet message board poetry. But also it's just interesting that modernism can be viewed as sort of the like exaltation of the self, you know
Mhm.
like like a certain, like a person's point of view, or a certain, like that the person, the individual sort of matters and has something to say, you know
Mm.
so it kind of lines up perfectly with, if you think of it from that point of view, like William Carlos Williams, even though someone is maybe just a poor old woman, or someone that works with a wheelbarrow, or maybe the child of immigrants like William Carlos Williams, or African Americans around the turn of the 20th century, you know William Carlos Williams has definitely embodies the modernist notion that everyone sort of has something to say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of a democratic approach.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. It's very egalitarian.
Yes. Even
Right. So
one might say.
so if you're a teenage girl, crying
Hmm.
into a notebook, writing,
Yeah.
sort of lines, William Carlos Williams thinks, hey, you know, you, even you have something to say,
Take it from and take it from me. Yeah. No.
because
What's yeah. No.
no,
Go ahead.
I'm not just gonna say, and because he spent like all this time as a doctor, and
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
he's like, has people coming in and out of his office, so he
Hmm.
has a William Carlos Williams, even though it's, there may even be some similarities to Kay Ryan, even though Kay Ryan is I would definitely say is a postmodernist, whereas William Carlos Williams is a modernist, but they both have their money on humanity. Not
Mm.
too, neither one of
Yeah.
them are too cynical. William
Yeah.
Carlos
Yeah.
Williams
Yeah.
and Kay Ryan is a postmodernist who uses some free verse, and she's not cynical. And William Carlos Williams is a modernist using free verse, and he's not cynical either.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because
I
there are
mean,
cynical postmodern poets for sure.
right. For sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Kay Ryan's not amongst their ranks. She has her, and she she's somewhat has been described as an everyman. There's been people out there that described her as an every, and this isn't
Yeah.
about Kay Ryan, but
Right. Yeah.
people have described her as as an everyman, and sort of put her money on America, and the wants people wants her poetry's in like sort of that everyday language.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. I think there is something, kind of, you know, maybe I'm leaning towards saying powerful. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but in him being, employed,
Mm.
you know, kind of a professional in sort of a completely different realm, for for his life, and writing poetry kind of on the side, um, and kind of and using both, to kind of inform one, to sort of inform each other in a way. Um, because I'm sure, on one hand, like he was able to use, the language of the people that he was dealing with, for his poetry, and maybe also, through reading and writing poetry, maybe it made him a bit more sympathetic. I don't know, or compassionate. I
Mm.
have no idea. Maybe not. But I think there is something to that, especially, for our kind of, our day and age too. It's kind of an old, maybe even an older idea of, sort of a kind of an amateur, um, which I'm not saying he's an amateur poet, but, you know, kind of, I think in our day and age and, kind of our landscape, today, like there's kind of a rush to professionalism or a rush to, be able to, if you're someone who's a creative person or someone who, um, you know, creates anything in any kind of way, you're trying to, as fast as you can, make that like your full-time job, you know, and make that, the way in which, you make money. And, for him, he found a freedom in making money separate from his art, and so I think that's something that, maybe for a lot of people, it might be, that might be just, kind of a good example of like, hey, you can make great art, really like, generation defining art and work a job, you know.
Right.
Um,
And
yeah.
still the whole time try to have your art seen by as many people as possible, because he was
Yeah.
no slouch. He was like
Hmm.
started like him, and like people, he viewed himself as part of a community, a
Right.
community of poets, and they
Hmm.
would like
Hmm.
kind of get together and do little projects, and
Hmm.
he was participating within his community while working a job, which he liked his job, which he also
hmm
viewed his job as a doctor as putting him as being part of a community.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
you know,
And as I had said earlier, he was a member of the Unitarian Church, in
okay,
Rutherford, his whole life. So, um, he was involved in the community in many ways.
this is a solid guy.
Right. Yeah.
This is a
This is
solid
like
guy.
right. He's like the guy down the street that's like, you see him every morning going out and getting his paper, at the mailbox,
Right.
and you just think like, that guy's probably got nothing going on in his head.
Right.
Every morning, Mr. Williams, Dr.
Right.
Williams is, nice guy with his wife, just regular old Dr. Williams, I don't know.
He might you and your friends. You guys might like put toilet paper on his house or something. You know what I mean? And he
No,
might
you
not
think
even get like that pissed off.
no, he's probably yeah. Or you're like I don't know. Like, I don't want to grow up to be like Mr. Williams.
Right.
I want to be a. But that was Ezra Pound,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
was what happened to Ezra Pound? He was
I don't know.
he died a
What
horrible
happened?
death. I'm fairly certain.
Was he
I can't remember what
in
he was.
continental Europe?
Yeah, he had some. He got into some political trouble. I can't.
Mm.
I don't remember the full details. I have to look into it. I'm actually. I wish I hadn't even brought it up because I don't know enough. I just remember a line in a Bukowski poem, um, like what they want, and he's naming all these artists that kind of lose their mind. He's like, they want Pound being dragged in a cage through the streets.
Mm.
So I don't know if he was actually dragged through. Everything else he said in the poem, I was fairly certain actually happened. So um, that may have happened too.
Well,
I'm actually. This is the first on the pod. I'm looking it up.
okay. And yeah, we're gonna go ahead and look this up. No, stay tuned, everyone. If you're still with us, thank you for being
We're
with us
gonna.
here on Verse Take. We're just kind of letting it flow a little bit, as we said. There's
No, he just was a very controversial figure, and spent some time in psychiatric hospitals. He was indicted for treason. Spent months in U.S. military detention camps. Um, yeah, ruled mentally unfit to stand trial. Yeah, yeah. So he kind of lost it,
he lost it. He definitely lost it.
Right. Yeah, yeah. But hey, I mean, that's the soul of the artist. That's what we want. That's what we want our artists to look like. We want them to be, Kanye West.
Well, I mean, there's, there's not to get into Nietzsche here, but there's, Dionysus, and then there's Apollo.
Mm, mm, mm,
They're both the gods of music.
yeah. Mm,
But Dionysus is like drunken, sort of the ecstasy of creativity, and Apollo is sort of like the rigor and professionalism and work that it takes to create music, and create art.
yeah.
So, every artist is kind of caught between the, Dionysus and Apollo, You gotta
Right. Yeah.
you gotta make your sacrifice to both in some ways.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you got to think William Carlos Williams had some. It's not like he was just like Mr. Straight Guy. I mean,
No,
to a
right,
degree,
right.
yeah, but I mean, he had to have something kind of going on behind the scenes
For sure.
to cause him to, yeah.
But I think where we left off, we were just saying that Ezra Pound lost his mind.
Yeah, we were saying that. But yeah, I kind of forget. I forgot. Yeah, Ezra Pound lost his mind. William
And
Carlos Williams, he had a little something there.
oh yeah,
you know,
yeah,
to
he definitely had a little. Every artist has a little Apollo and a little
Mhm.
Dionysus.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
basically because William Carlos Williams was sort of vexed by the rise of T.S. Eliot.
Mm, mm, mhm.
So that proved.
Yeah, he also, yeah. I in that little documentary I had watched on him, he was reading from some of his letters, and one of them he like made a comment about T.S. Eliot and all his followers kind of, kind of falling to the wayside more or less,
Mm,
like them kind of,
right, right.
going, kind of going down, going away. Um, which hurts personally because T.S. Eliot's one of my favorites. So,
Right, right.
I hate to take sides, but you know, it's kind of funny.
Do I like T.S. Eliot better or William Carlos Williams? I
You gotta
like them
take
both actually. I don't know
Stones or
if I'm.
Beatles, dude.
Do you have to choose?
You
I
have to
choose.
choose.
I choose Rolling Stones over Beatles.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
But I'm just wondering who's more like the Beatles and who's more like the Stones. Yeah, William Carlos Williams would have to be like the Beatles, right? I don't
I don't
know.
know. I might have to give T.S. Eliot more like the Beatles because, like the Beatles, he changed music. He changed the sound of it um, by bringing in, like the Beatles brought in all those elements of like classical music
Right, yeah, and
into the pop
T.S.
song.
Eliot, he would make allusions to, sort of the Greek and Roman world and
Yeah, and he kind of did. I read someone saying that he kind of did for poetry what jazz did for music, kind of
mm,
freeing it for to its own music. So
right,
maybe I would,
right.
yeah,
Well,
maybe I'm
hey,
thinking
yeah, and
that
you're
way.
right. And William Carlos Williams, he was more down home, like the Stones,
Yeah, with the
inaccessible.
blues, right?
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. So I like William Carlos Williams more than T.S. Eliot.
Okay, well, I'm going T.S. Eliot, but I
Yeah,
don't know
me
about the
too.
Beatles and Rolling Stones. I hate to choose between the two. I don't know.
I
That's
do too as well.
yeah,
You
right.
made me choose. You made me
I
choose, and then you
well,
didn't
here's the thing. I
choose.
choose not to. So,
Well, I'm from
no,
the
those are
South, so I'm choose the
yeah,
Stones.
yeah.
Easy.
No, yeah, it's a bit of a joke because I'm thinking of like the political landscape where like you gotta choose. You can't just
Oh yeah,
you
yeah,
can't be you can't just sit it out, dude. You gotta make it just you gotta choose.
yeah. I guess so.
Yeah. Well, if you say so, all right. Yeah. But
But
who do we got next week? We're going.
next week we have Tracy K. Smith.
Ooh, all right. Yeah.
Do you wanna do a Ezra Pound episode since we talked about him so much?
I was thinking about it. I was even thinking about it. Made me think. Do we want to go and do like an Images episode, like a Black Mountain poetry episode? You know, uh,
The
different.
I like jumping around.
Yeah.
Just exploring the different ones, and
Though.
there may be kismet in our random order that we choose.
Hmm.
Just like with Kay Ryan, I didn't think there'd be any illusions between the two, but
Hmm.
they're one sort of a modernist versus a postmodernist, but they're
Yeah.
but both of them sort of low in cynicism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd be down to do throw an Ezra Pound in there. I think we have to like. I don't want to. I hate to even say this or even play to this, but I don't want to do too many dead white guys. Like I want to switch
Mm.
things up and keep it fresh and different. But I mean that's a hard thing is that there's just so many good ones. So I mean it's you know yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
dude, I'm just doing poets that I like and that are in the
Mm-hmm.
canon, and I don't care like if they're white or
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
like I mean,
I'm
I kind of feel like if we talk them up,
mm-hmm.
we're sort
Mm-hmm.
of talking them up. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about Ezra Pound as I mean, don't get me wrong. I've read some Ezra Pound poetry, but don't get, to be honest, there's something to enjoy about all the famous poets. I mean,
Yeah, for
if
sure.
there's a poet that has become a part of the American or the Western canon, so to speak, and you're like, there's not worth. Nobody is not worth doing an episode on. You
That's
know what
true.
I mean?
That's true.
Like,
Yeah, I've never. There's. Yeah. That's the thing. I'm gonna sound. I think like each week I'm gonna sound like I'm a huge fan of them, because like there's no poets that have like made that kind of list. That
right.
like American English canon that I'm not that I'm
There's got to be
don't like
something
them.
to enjoy. I mean,
Right.
how
Yeah.
could there not? How could there not be?
I don't know. Yeah.
And then
That's it. Yeah.
and then in February we'll just do four black poets back to
Naturally.
back. But I mean, you want to get
And
on?
only because it's the dead of winter.
Remember that
For no
poem?
other reason than that.
Yeah. Remember that poem where the word was like wind, and we thought it was wind or something like that. What poet was that? I can't think of who that was. She was a poet laureate, one of the poet laureates.
Did we do the episode?
No, not an episode, but just
Okay.
a couple of years ago, we just read some of her poetry. I think
It does sound familiar. I know. I know what
I
you're
don't know.
kind of talking about, but yeah.
Not to ramble, everybody, but next week we do have Tracy K.
Tracy K. Smith, who I want to say was a poet laureate, like 2018, 2019, maybe around there, maybe 2017 to 2019, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and got the Pulitzer as well for, I want to say, Life on Mars. But yeah, so she's legit. So for all of you watching at home, it's nothing to sneeze at next week.
Right.
Just because she's still alive and well.
Right. And that's good. We're getting some mix. We're getting the classics still alive and well. I can't wait till we do Jack Kerouac and always like Allen Ginsberg.
Yeah.
I don't even know who my favorite poet even really is.
Well, yeah. Well, even thinking,
Edgar Allan Poe. I used to say Edgar Allan Poe. I like Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, for sure. But even with William Carlos Williams, him being a fan of John Keats when he was younger, I used to love John Keats, and I would be down to do a John Keats episode as well, because John Keats is like the man. He's like the original 27 Club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think he
okay.
died.
I think I've heard about John Keats. Yeah, I'll add him to the list as well.
Yeah, I want to say he may have died of I think it might have been tuberculosis or something like that. Got it in his 20s, sadly. Yeah.
Yeah. This would have been like the 1800s or something, right?
I think he was in the 1700s, I believe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a wrap. Yeah. Thank God for modern medicine,
Yeah, for sure.
Right. William Carlos Williams,
William Carlos Williams, definitely a modernist, also a doctor. So.
And I mean, hey, that's what brought in the modern age, right? Is that medical revolution. So hats off to him,
Right.
That guy was on the cutting edge in more ways than one.
Right, for sure. Not only was his poetry sharp,
Right, yeah. But so is the scalpel.
Right, yeah.
Scalpel.
Poetry is sharp and concise as a scalpel.
Right. You gotta write that one down.
Yeah, I might have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so imagist, American imagist, William Carlos Williams, great. Famously name dropped by Jack Kerouac.
Yeah. William Carlos Williams.
Right. So
what did he say?
yeah, guys.
I made a poem out of it.
and that's almost like a postmodern. You see that postmodern pull away. Like once Bodhisattva starts becoming characters in the poem, that was for another episode, man. That's for another.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey.
Guys,
thanks for
Yes,
watching.
thanks, guys. Gonna
Leave
have
some
to string these
comments,
together a little
leave
bit.
some
Well,
reviews.
right.
Yeah, we're gonna clean this up and subscribe and share with your friends. Maybe send it to your mom or your grandma. Just someone, a loved one.
To
Share
your
it with a loved
auntie,
one.
to your cousin.
Cousin, maybe even.
Yeah, hey. Whatever family orientation
Right.
you guys
However
have.
you call them,
But thanks everyone, and we shall see you later. Signing off. I've been James.
And I have been Justin.
Take care, everybody.
Yep.
See you next time.